you all remember how we get out? Okay. So Kelsey, you go down the side. You will be waiting for Nancy to follow the lady. Yeah. By the way, good job. Join in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And you can even climb on with us. There's a melody and a descant. Shift if and when you want to. Breathe in. Breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, when I breathe in,
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Work for justice! I want to begin, as always, by welcoming and embracing all that you bring with you today, all of your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, all that help make you who you are is welcome here this morning. And this, of course, includes those who hear me say this each Sunday as a meaningful and important part of our service together, as well as those who might be hearing it for the first time today. You're equally as welcomed and appreciated. And, of course, it includes all of our friends who are streaming with us this morning as well. I know you're there because I hear from you frequently, and I look at the numbers, and we've got really over 100 folks streaming with us every month. So we want you to know we recognize that you're a vital part of our community. So thanks for being with us. Got a few announcements I want to make, and even more. They're piling up here. So a bit to go over here this morning. We probably are going to forego the usual greeting of one another, so I hope you'll save that for our social hour. This is going to be the choir's last Sunday for till September. So thank you all so much for another great year. Thank you to Marshall Peterson for helping them go out with a bang. You probably noticed on your way in there are some plants for sale out front. Our Social Justice Coordinating Council has what they're calling a Plants for Justice sale to help raise money to help pay for jail fines, as well as legal fees for immigration and others, as an action step that came out of their recent participation in the Know Your Rights workshop. So there's lots of different plants out there for you to enjoy. I hope you'll pick some up for a good cause. Also want to let you know that after our service, there are going to be tickets for sale for the Roy Zimmerman concert that is going to be here Friday, June 8th. If you haven't heard Roy Zimmerman, you will thank me that you did. So he is a progressive activist, singer, songwriter who is just so prolific, it's unbelievable. He will get an idea and pull his car off the road and write a song and then perform it that night. He did that last time he was here. You can go online to Roy Zimmerman's website, and he puts a new song up every week. And the one that I watched this morning was to the theme of the Brady Bunch. It was called the Shady Bunch. And now I can't get the song out of my head, but you can imagine who the Shady Bunch refers to, right? So anyway, it's great. $20 tickets, and you can use a card if you want to purchase them, but Peggy will be in the back in between services for that. So we want to give Roy the audience that he deserves. He's come the last couple of years, and we haven't had a big crowd. It's hard to promote, so we thought we'd start early and actually sell tickets this time, and maybe in the next week or two we'll even have him sing with us on our big screen one time, so you can get a taste. But Gordon, you came for the first time last year, right? Every time. I remember the first time you came and said, "Where did you find this guy?" Right? So anyway, wonderful talent, Roy Zimmerman. Our annual meeting is going to be happening Sunday, June 10th, following our second service, a time where we elect board officers and we'll pass our budget and any other discussions that we need to address then. And also Shelley, there's Shelley over there in the choir. She is at a table in the back that will be educating those interested in finding out more about the Poor People's Campaign that started earlier this week. Okay, now, here we go. Thank you, Tom. So those interested in the Alliance for Jobs and Clean Energy work, including its initiative 1631, there is also a table in the back with information about this very important potential change in our state. So I hope that you will see Tom and learn more about it. So thank you so much. What's that? Everybody sign. Has everybody signed, or you're wanting everybody? So we want everybody to sign, because to get this on the ballot we need signatures, right? So do that, and maybe you'll be inspired to become a signature gatherer also. So we're hoping for that. So I'm going to probably add to the weight of our service just a little bit this morning, because there's a couple of things that have happened that I feel like I have to address. And I know that there's a couple of things that happen every week. They have for the past 2 years. It just feels like we're continually being, as I say, kicked in the gut. And there's just this underlying hum of anxiety, I think, for a lot of us. But there were a couple of really terrible things that happened this week. Of course, that latest mass shooting at a high school on Friday. And I don't know what to say about it, but I can't not say something about it. And I don't want to have a moment of silence, and I don't want to offer prayers. I want us to, as a society, come together and stop something that is unnecessary. Something that, when we had stricter gun laws in the 90s for a period, really cut the amount of mass shootings down by 40% in this country. Other countries that have put controls on weapons of war on their streets have practically eliminated mass shootings. So it's something that we know how to solve, and we're not solving it at the despair of so many. And so I just got to put it out there. Moral dissent, it's called, moral dissent. And then, what's gone on in Gaza this week is just unjustifiable in my thinking. I cannot get in this pulpit after what I understand and believe to be militant Israelis using sniper rifles to gun down peaceful protesters that have been walled in and walled off from the world, including emergency workers who were shot and killed, injured, while trying to respond to the thousands that had been injured in this sniper fire. There's no justification for it. And I have tried to speak about this in a way that unites the different sides of this ancient conflict. And I just can't do it anymore. If it means I'm going to be called anti-Semitic because I say something, then I'm going to be anti-Semitic for saying something, because shooting people like fish in a barrel is inexcusable. It's not self-defense. And I hate to start with such a heavy conversation this morning, but I'm going to be talking about the meaning of worship within a Unitarian Universalist context in a few minutes, and this is part of it. As I'll say later, this is part of the heavy lifting that is part of our definition of worship. And I don't think it would be morally justifiable for us to come together on a Sunday morning, even if we don't have the answers, is to have this, how to solve these problems, and not say, these are problems. These are problems. and they need to be fixed, and the injustices need to stop, and the injustices can stop. Okay. So we're going to light our chalice now with these conversations in mind. These words we hear each Sunday, the start of our service, that this chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It is the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth is lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Spirituality is not a religion. It is a way of life. These words hold profound significance for those of us who do not subscribe to a traditional faith, as well as for many who do. The spiritual quest is not some added benefit to our life, something you embark on if you have the time and inclination, said the author and motivational speaker John Bradshaw. We are spiritual beings on an earthly journey. Our spirituality makes up our beingness. And here are a few comments I wrote for the All Little Nature Chapel. In the midst of chaos, in these times of darkness, when the whole world seems to have lost its compass, let us breathe and remember that the light is ever present, even if hidden behind clouds. Hope, believe, manifest the magical outcomes which will spring from our faith in a world going on its tortuous way towards the paradise we all seek under various names, each one of us following a unique path. Breathe. In, out, hope for the light. Namaste.
Our first in-service hymn today was written by a Canadian Unitarian Universalist, Joyce Poley. I got to meet her at a conference many years back. She was a delightful woman. And this is one of my favorite hymns, and I think speaks a lot to us about worship. Number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Please stand as you're willing and able.
When we trust
grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart flares within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Good morning. I would like to invite our young and our young at heart forward for our story for all ages. Good morning. It's so good to see all your faces. So from what I know about this community, there are a fair number of hikers and backpackers in the crowd. Yes? Yeah. Have any of you ever gotten lost on a trail? Okay, that makes me feel a little better about the story I'm about to tell. So the first thing you need to know about this story is that my family goes on a lot of adventures together. When I was in elementary school, we caravanned and met in North Dakota for a camping/family reunion trip. When I was in middle school, my mom and my aunt drove me, my brother, my grandma, and 2 of my cousins to New Mexico in July. And the second thing you need to know about this story is that the Pacific Crest Trail is a hiking trail that starts basically on the US-Mexico border and ends just barely on the other side of the US-Canadian border. It's very, very long. It's broken into many parts, and there are many points of entry. So when I was about 16 or 17, we all piled into a car, drove a couple hours east into the mountains to the Pacific Crest Trail for a 4-day backpacking trip. We were not doing the whole trail, but there were 7 of us, so this was a no small feat. We started on the trail in mid-morning. It was sunny, and we were looking forward to some time together in the mountains. And the first day was horrible. It was the worst. It was hot. We were hiking up, and there were mosquitoes. And if you look at the pictures from that day, we looked like we wanted to kill each other. But the second morning, we woke up on top of this pass, and it was so beautiful. There were goats, mountain goats. It was stunning. And so we really got in the spirit of it, and we hiked down. We were going to come back up to another pass to camp on the next night, but we had to hike down first. And so we hiked down and down and down and down and down, and we hiked and we down more and more, and along a river through tall, tall trees. But as often happens when you're hiking with a big group, the more we hiked, the more we spread out as we each found our stride. And that didn't detract from the sense of being together and the awe we felt about being surrounded by nature, with the exception of me and my brother. Obnoxious kids that we were, we practically ran down the trail, paying very little attention to our surroundings, knowing next to nothing about the trail we were on. And we continued on our merry way, laughing and singing and probably teasing one another down and down and down even further until we came to a fork in the trail. So we stopped, and peering to the left, down the left fork looked like a trail. And peering to the right, along the right fork, it also looked like a trail. So maybe, luckily for us, my aunt's partner at the time, Cher, had followed us. She had kept up. And she had a map. So at the time, I'm 100% sure we thought we knew what we were looking at on the map. And after a short discussion, we decided to go right. So again, we continued along our merry way, confident in our decision, and actually taking the time to enjoy one another's company and discuss all the big questions of the universe. On we hiked and on we hiked until we came to a small campground with tents and other people. This wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility. We were on a very popular, well-established trail in the height of backpacking season, but there were roads. And now that we thought about it, we had been going down again, and we were supposed to go up at some point. So we decided to stop and wait, figuring they can't be too far behind us. But then the sun started to go down, and it started to get dark, and we were starting to get cold and hungry, and my parents had the food. So we continued to wait, and the other people camping around us came back, and they had a fire, and we had s'mores, and it was really fun, but no family still. So eventually, Cher decided, okay, this is ridiculous. We've been waiting here for a long time. So she stood up and declared, I'm going to go find them. So she left us with the family, and she hiked up the trail, and she hiked up, and she hiked up, and she ended up meeting my dad about halfway. He had come down. The rest of my family had made it to the top of the pass. And we figured out where they were, and they figured out that we were safe and all was well. And she came back, and we ended up deciding to stay in this campground for the rest of the night. And then we got up early and hiked all the way up to meet them the next morning. So through this whole event, I remember feeling a little nervous, definitely hungry, but I was never scared, which is sort of amazing because I was old enough to understand all the different things that could happen to two kids who were lost on a big, long trail. But even from afar, I knew that Cher would take care of us. She would make sure we were okay, and that she had left us because she trusted us and because we trusted her. So Todd's sermon this morning is about the theme of worship. And I had this whole plan about how I was going to tie it together with the idea of trust and the trust we have with one another. But my parents are in town this weekend, and I was telling them that I was going to share this story with you all, and they remember it completely differently. Like, may as well have been a different camping trip. So what that brought home to me was our fourth principle: the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Because we each have our own truth, but there's something really wonderful about the truth we find together. So on that note, please join me in singing our children and youth to their religious education classes with hymn number 413, Go Now in Peace.
Today we have a special collection. Inside your order of service, you will find a small envelope which you may use for your contribution. Don't bother licking it shut, as we reuse these envelopes. This morning's special collection is in support of Odyssey Youth Movement. Odyssey Youth Movement promotes equity for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning youth in the inland Northwest through youth-driven programs and community education. Programming occurs 4 nights a week at the center located in the Perry District, where participants ages 13 to 24 are offered programs around healthy relationships, skill building, creative outlets, LGBTQ+ history and culture, and more. While in the space, all youth are invited to join in the nightly communal meal, gather needed supplies from the hygiene and clothing closet, or seek resources from the staff or volunteer mentors. Queer youth deserve to feel safe and affirmed in all spaces in their community. So Odyssey also works alongside schools, churches, and youth-serving organizations to be sure these spaces are welcoming to LGBTQ+ community members. Together, along with community support and the amazing program participants, Odyssey knows that this work will lead to a future of thriving LGBTQ+ young people throughout the inland Northwest. More information can be found on their website at odysseyyouth.org. By Transitions. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
And 1, 2, 3, 4.
Every
Thank you so much. Excuse me, 1 minute. Now that doesn't bother you, but if you were watching from home, the pulpit was going to be over here, so sorry about that. We're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who we are most thinking of this morning, and do have a candle of celebration and congratulations for Stephanie Sampson's grandson, Nick, who graduated from high school last night with straight A's. It's pretty impressive, but listen to this. Stephanie says that when he was in kindergarten, Nick was diagnosed with autism and told that he would never learn to read. And of course, a candle for the Palestinian peoples of the world, and for those who are, I'm sure, just heartbroken and impacted most over those shootings at the high school in Texas. Let's take just a brief moment now on behalf of others, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
As we prepare for meditation, may I ask that you breathe deeply. In, out, in, out, and then concentrate on the pictures suggested by the following quotations. There is no drop of water in the ocean, not even in the deepest parts of the abyss, that does not know and respond to the mysterious forces that create the tide. By Rachel Carson. Heaven on earth is a choice we must make, not a place we must find. By Dr. Wayne Dyer. Nature is my sanctuary. We are one. Once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. By Ralph Waldo Emerson. Breathe. In, out. In, out. Namaste.
Thank you all so much. Only choir in the country where instead of wearing robes, they wear tie-dyed t-shirts. Everyday people. So several years ago now, while I was still living in Louisville, I had the opportunity to spend an entire day with a delegation of Muslims from Afghanistan. And when it came time for their noontime prayers, I offered the use of our sanctuary at Clifton Unitarian Church, very near to where we planned on having lunch together. Although grateful, my offer also visibly made them nervous, and they quickly huddled to discuss the matter. Eventually, the translator asked, they want to know what goes on in your church. I wasn't quite sure, what to say, so I started going over the usual order of service, at which point the translator interrupted and said they want to know if there are any crosses or if you pray in it, which apparently would have made it unsuitable. Oh no, I chuckled. You will not find any crosses or praying going on in our church. I then explained a little bit about Unitarian Universalism, how we're open to being inspired by many traditions, including Islam, but not bound by any. And this seemed to satisfy their concerns. After they finished their prayers, which they did in private, they informed me that according to their tradition, any place that Muslims offer ritual prayers becomes an official mosque. Since the word mosque literally means place of prostration, that made sense, but I had not considered at the time of making this offer that ours would become the first Unitarian Universalist mosque in the country. So there it is in Louisville. Louisville is how Louisvillians say Louisville in Kentucky. And while I recognize the value of humility, which shares the same root is the word human, these images of what normally goes on in a place of worship, kneeling before crosses and praying to divinities or ritually lowering ourselves to the ground before an all-powerful being, can be troubling for those of us striving to uplift the worth and dignity of every person, and who recognize the pivotal role that human agency must play in the work of making our world a more just place for everyone. This same aversion has made some of us sensitive to the use of traditional religious jargon in general. Many Unitarian Universalist groups refuse to even call themselves churches. They use words like fellowship or congregation or community. Some won't even describe theirs as a religion or say that they are part of the Unitarian Universalist faith. I'm personally not troubled by any of these words for a few reasons. Firstly, I don't believe that words have magical powers. I don't accept that some words should be considered taboo, that there are some things we should just never say. Secondly, I greatly value freedom of expression and honest dialogue and despise the practice of linguicide, whether it's imposed upon indigenous people by invading occupiers or by social liberals in the name of political correctness. I do not accept that people have a right not to hear what they disagree with, nor that the rest of us have an obligation not to say things others wouldn't like. Thirdly, if as liberals we don't stay engaged in the religious debate and dialogue, then those seeking religious understanding will have only the extremists to turn to. Promoting an alternative, more inclusive, and I believe more accurate religious orientation as Unitarian Universalist is our heritage, it's our right, and it is our obligation. But mostly, I'm not troubled by religious jargon because I love words. I love delving into their etymology and understanding their original and often unconscious meanings. The root of the word religion itself, for example, is the same as in the word ligament, right? And refers to that which joins things or connects things together. So religion is literally about creating ties between people, especially people who've been separated and segregated. It's about reconnecting the outcast and oppressed with their social rights. It's about joining us all together. It's about solidarity. It's about making connections. Religion is that which enables us to sing the words of the 13th century Muslim poet, Rumi. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Last week, a fellow at Rotary asked if what he heard is true, that I'm the minister of an atheist church. I explained that there are atheists in my church and that I consider myself an atheist, but that ours is a Unitarian Universalist church, not an atheist church, and there are people here who believe many things. Good, he said, because I don't see how you can call it a church if it's atheist. I then explained that there are 2.5 billion people in the world today who are part of non-theistic religions, meaning they are not defined by their theology, by their belief in a God or in gods. These include some pretty obscure religions you've probably never heard of, like Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and religious humanism, and the different faiths of many indigenous peoples around the world, as well as Unitarian Universalism. Some among these may include stories of gods or have members that believe in a god or gods, but they are not defined as Buddhist, Hindu, Humanist, Unitarian Universalist, or what have you, because they have a particular belief about God. They are all part of a non-theistic religious tradition, meaning that theology is not what defines those religions. Yet in Western European culture, which has been dominated by Christianity, religion is almost exclusively defined by theology, by what one believes about God. As such, doctrinal differences have been an excuse to justify discrimination against, domination over, and segregation from others. Yet according to my understanding of religion, I counter the idea that you can't call it a church if it doesn't believe in God with you can't call it a church if it discriminates against and condemns others. So I have no problem calling myself both an atheist and someone who is deeply religious, because I am deeply religious. When he appeared on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher a couple years ago, Reverend Dr. William Barber, minister of the Greenleaf Christian Church in Goldsboro, North Carolina, told the show's host, a notorious atheist, "I too am an atheist." Barber is the minister who relaunched the Poor People's Campaign just this week, 50 years after Martin Luther King did so in 1968. In his book, The Third Reconstruction, Barber says, "Wearing my clerical collar, I realized I stood out among his guests, so I decided to announce to Bill that I too am an atheist. He seemed taken aback. So I explained that if we're talking about the God who hates poor people, immigrants, and gay folks, I don't believe in that God either." So maybe he's not an atheist in the strictest sense of the term, but Barber understands that his religion isn't about what he believes about God, but about demonstrating the principles that religion is supposed to be about. We cannot let narrow religious folks hijack our moral vocabulary, he says, forces who speak loudly about things God says little about, while saying so little about the issues that are at the heart of all our religious traditions: truth and justice and love and mercy. When it comes right down to it, Barber may believe in God, in a God who doesn't hate and discriminate, but that's not what makes his a church any more than it's what makes our church a church. They are churches because in our religions, holy means whole. And we believe in saving souls through solidarity, by bringing people together, working to make our entire society more inclusive by embracing the outcast, the downtrodden, those discarded and disregarded by our unjust, discriminatory, segregated, broken systems. So I have no problem using the word church, or calling myself deeply religious, or using all those other words that make some of us cringe, like faith, holy, salvation, and the word that I want to focus on now, worship. Again, for many of us, it may prompt images of superstitious people kneeling and cowering before an invisible imaginary deity. But just like those two potent words that we've already discussed, religion and God, which have come for many to mean their very opposites, segregation and hate instead of wholeness and love, the idea that worship has anything to do with lowering and humiliating ourselves and considering ourselves unworthy and undeserving of goodness is likewise the very opposite of what the word means. The root of worship is the same as the words worth and worthy. So whatever else it means, going to church shouldn't make us feel unworthy and worthless. In fact, I'd say going to church doesn't have much to do with worship to begin with. For to worship is the act of lifting up and upholding the things that are worth the most to us. not about sitting in pews or singing songs or hearing sermons, even hearing great sermons. It's about demonstrating our values. It's not about groveling before an imaginary, angry deity, nor about how unworthy we are, nor admitting that we are all sinners who have fallen short of the glory of Santa Claus. Worship, again, is the very opposite of these things. It begins by uplifting ourselves, by recognizing that we have value, that we matter, that we have the power to make a difference in the world and in the lives of others, that we are worth something, that we are worthy, and that the only way things are going to get better for any of us is through our own human agency. If worship is about lifting up what we value, what's worth the most to us, then it must also be about lifting others up, like I just did. It means countering the degrading message of fall and redemption by promoting human worth and dignity and agency. This is what Catholic theologian Matthew Fox did with his controversial book, Original Blessing, countering the false doctrine of original sin, countering the notion that we have all fallen short of the glory of God, with the belief that we are all born in the image and likeness of God, and that each of us can be a powerful, loving force of goodness and kindness and creativity in this world. To teach people, especially the young ones, that they are anything but images of God and heirs of divine creativity and responsibility is very dangerous, Fox says. Compassion is diminished. Fear increases. Feelings of inferiority and inadequacy follow. One is set up for addictions, not only addictions to alcohol and drugs and shopping and others, but an addiction to the punitive father religion and its representatives. Fox would agree with the Archbishop Oscar Romero, the late great liberation theologian, gunned down in his San Salvador pulpit in 1980 while upholding the worth and dignity of his oppressed people there. Romero said, God has sown goodness. No child is born evil. We are all called to holiness. The values that God has sown in the human heart and that the present-day people esteem so highly are not rare gems. They are things that appear continually. The original pristine human vocation is goodness. We have all been born for goodness. No one is born with inclinations to kidnap. No one is born with inclinations to be a criminal. No one is born to be a torturer. No one is born to be a murderer. We have all been born to be good, to love one another, to understand one another. As Romero proved through both his life and his death, worship is about lifting people up. Not only by countering degrading theological ideas, but by literally working to lift people out of poverty and despair, by raising wages, raising the standard of living for everyone. There's an amazing story in the Christian gospel of a woman described as bent over and unable to stand up straight for most of her life. She burst in on Jesus while he's teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath during what is supposed to be an exclusively male meeting. Instead of being angry with her, like the other men were, Jesus is overwhelmed by her strength and her courage. She finally gets so bent out of shape, as theologian Walter Wink puts it, that she breaks the glass ceiling to stand erect in a male religious space, owning her own worth and dignity. In her society, the only people who counted were those who had the right to call themselves sons of Abraham. But Jesus dared to call her daughter of Abraham. But he makes no move to heal her affliction. Instead, he tells her Your faith has made you whole. She was healed the moment that she stood up for herself. The moment she demanded equality, the moment that she recognized her own worth. That's what worship can look like women's liberation, like women's suffrage, like Me Too. It happens when we lift ourselves and others and our values up during our Sunday services, but it happens mostly when we're busy making justice, lifting people up out of poverty, out of despair, out of prison, out of inequality everywhere. Certainly our hymns and readings and sermons reflect our values, and our time together on Sunday mornings can rightly be called worship because it is a time that we gather to lift our spirits, uphold our dignity, and consider what is worth most to us, but it is neither the end nor the beginning of our worship. As a religion that promotes works more than faith, pragma more than dogma, we know what we do on Sundays is meaningless if we're not upholding our greatest values every day of the week, every moment of the week, wherever we are. We don't merely worship in church on Sundays, but by working every day to create heaven on earth by lifting up justice and equality and compassion and freedom and peace everywhere we go. For this reason, we know we are faithful worshipers if worshiping takes a toll on us. For our values are heavy. Continuously lifting them up is hard work. Genuine worship is so much harder than groveling and convincing ourselves we are powerless and can't make a difference even if we wanted to, and then we should just trust that things are going to be better in heaven. It's so much more than simply going to church. Lifting ourselves up by owning our own worth and agency means that we must also own our responsibility to make a difference. And making a difference can sometimes be almost unbearable. Worshiping means challenging the status quo. And challenging the status quo can make some pretty powerful adversaries. It might mean losing a job. It might mean losing our friends, losing our family. Sometimes it means risking our freedom. Sometimes it means feeling afraid that we're vulnerable to those who might want to do us harm. Worship, genuine worship, takes its toll, sometimes on our hearts and our minds and our bodies, but our souls somehow cannot be satisfied without it. So we're willing to give up everything for it. We're willing to lift our voices and raise our question and uphold our principles and values no matter what the cost. When I left California at age 18 to go to college in Texas, I took everything I owned, which wasn't much, in a duffel bag that my father had used while in the Navy. Everything that is except my many religious books, which I had packed in a bulging, beat-up suitcase that my mother had given to me. They were both so heavy that once I retrieved them at the Dallas-Fort Worth baggage claim, I had to pick one up in each hand so that I could lunge forward with them as far as I could, just to get a few feet. And I had to do that all the way through the airport to the passenger pickup where my ride awaited. It was hard and it was embarrassing, but it was worth it because those two bags held everything that was worth something to me at the time. Everything that was worthy of being lifted up, difficult as they were to carry, more than just a few feet. And this leads me to another point about worship. It also means letting go. You see, even after all the effort, even though those heavy books meant so much to me back then, I don't have one of them today. During my studies, I began to let go of those conservative religious ideas within those books, along with the beliefs that they had once instilled in me. I let them go in exchange for other books and other ideas, and I've been letting go of my old ideas and ways ever since, always prepared to move on. Because worship is as much about setting our burdens down and letting go of our old habits and beliefs that no longer serve us well and just aren't worth that much anymore. It's about getting rid of our old baggage. This notion represents a paradigm shift because so many people go to church to be reassured that their old ways and their old beliefs are still worth clinging to, so they can take it easy, so they don't have to take on the burden of lifting up new ways, better ways, more just and loving ways. That's why today's religions have been with us for hundreds and thousands of years, because our ancestors' baggage has been passed on to us. And some of us just can't wait to pass it on to our own kids. But worship means knowing when it's time to let go, when we've gone as far as we can go in this life and must begin to let somebody else do the heavy lifting, to lift the things that are valuable to them. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life, Dr. King once said. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to that promised land. As hard as he worked, heavy as his burdens had been, Dr. King knew when to let go. The day after he'd spoken these words, he was killed standing on his balcony at a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. Finally, it's important to know that worship is something that we do together. Worship is public and communal. Hard as it is not our burden alone. Dr. King, who was used to getting dozens of death threats a day, was awoken one night by a phone call that truly frightened him. The words I spoke to God that midnight are still vivid in my memory, he later recounted. I am here taking a stand for what I believe is right, but now I am afraid. The people are looking to me for leadership, and if I stand before them without strength and courage, they too will falter. I am at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I've come to the point where I can't face it alone. Moments later, he said, I could hear an inner voice singing to me, Martin Luther, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth, and lo, I will be with you even to the end of the world. As a Baptist minister, Dr. King interpreted this as the voice of Jesus saying, still to fight on. He promised never to leave me alone, no, never alone, no, never alone. He promised never to leave me alone, never to leave me alone. But as Unitarian Universalists, whatever our theology or lack thereof, we too know that we are never alone because we have each other. Worship is something that we do together. It's an act of solidarity, inside and outside of church. It's not about settling ourselves down, but about raising each other up, raising unpopular questions, and sometimes raising Cain. Worship occurs whenever and wherever we uphold our most worthwhile principles and values. Worship is humanistic for us, not theological. Worship brings people together. It includes the outcast and the oppressed. Worship is practical. It doesn't happen the first day of the week, but every day of the week. And worship is done in solidarity. It doesn't happen alone. And that's why I don't mind calling what we do worship. Why I think we do it so well, and why I thank you for worshiping with me. Thank you.
28, the fire of commitment. Please rise as you're willing and able. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion beat to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
We are the light. The following words are mine from the Old Little Nature Chapel. Even in the throes of chaos and violence, we must remember that every one of us represents a ray of the divine light. In time, this light will grow and permeate the universe. Let us strive to create paradise on earth. Namaste. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.